Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm Chuck Everson, your 7-foot host from Villanova University, and my partner, my identical twin partner today, wearing the same gear, the great Dr. Sonny Sparrow. How are you, Sonny?
I'm great, Chuck. We're talking to a two-peater today, man. I can't wait.
Well, yeah, listen, I mean, I'm glad we're starting to, we keep talking about we're going to get into current day. We're going to get into current day. We've talked all through the 80s, I think, and the 90s. We're starting to get into current day stuff. And who better than to have this basketball lifer with us? This guy's been coaching for, it's unbelievable, for over 30 years. And he's not an old guy. And he's been coaching for over 30 years on all different levels, Sonny. So without any further ado, I'm going to get this party started here with our guest today. As I said, he's a basketball lifer. He's in this for the long haul, Sonny, and he's coaching for over 30 years. He's a 4-time national champion, 20 years overall with the UConn Huskies. 13
going for one for the thumb now, man.
Yeah, 13 of those years with Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun. And he's currently the assistant coach with the back-to-back national champions, UConn Huskies. Please welcome to the show, Coach Tom Moore. How are you, Tom? How you doing?
Chuck, I'm great. Thank you, Sonny. Great to be on the show. It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
so we got to
appreciate you coming out.
We got to jump right into Calhoun. We got to get right to it. Let's talk about Coach Calhoun. He is such a character. He did impersonations of Boeheim. He talks, but he just has a deep soul though for his players in the game. Talk a little bit about Coach Calhoun. Throw whatever you want out there. We're all ears.
Geez, Sonny, that could go so many different ways. I have like G-rated stories, PG-rated stories, R-rated stories.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, referee stories, like just an absolute legend, and someone obviously, I'm sitting there in 1994 and I'm like, I didn't play in college, right? Like I didn't even, I was an average high school player, so I'm like, I make this decision my senior year in college. I'm going to try to get into college coaching. I got a journalism degree out of Boston University. I got nothing else. And in the word, you guys know Coach D. Rowe, right? You remember Coach Rowe? He used to say, like, you need rabbis in this business, right? You need people who will help you. And he used to always talk about that with Coach Dave Gavitt and Mike Tranghese and all people who just help people going through. But I get into coaching. I'm scuffling around Division III. I'm Division II. I'm making no money at Worcester State College as a head coach in '94, and I'm dying to try to get to Division I. And he throws me this lifeline. Like Carl Hobbs was a really good friend of mine, and Carl was moving up at UConn that year from the third assistant to the second assistant. So they needed someone in the old, you guys remember the old restricted earnings?
Yes, we
yeah.
Like,
Rick Callahan.
For us. That third spot for a couple of years until the coaches won a class action suit. It was restricted at 16,000. So Carl was moving out of that spot to a bigger spot, and they really didn't have anyone else. Like, there was no one in line for that spot. So Carl's like, I know a guy up in Worcester, is a Division III guy, whatever. Coach believed enough in me, and he gave me that shot. So, like, I tell people all the time, that's, you get a shot to go from Worcester State to UConn when that thing was like rolling, right? Like it was 94. They hadn't won the first one yet, but he had got it at that point.
Right.
They'd done all the heavy lifting, right? He got there in 86. And you guys appreciate this because you guys played. Like, think about this. I tell people this all the time. His first Big East head coaches meetings, he's sitting in there like that spring of either it was 85 or 86, but like he's in there with legends. There's only 9 guys in the room. Of the 8 other guys in 85, 3 guys went to the Final Four. Roley went to the Final Four, Louis went to the Final Four, and John went to the Final, right? So right. 3 of the 8 competitors, and he's got the 9th place team, and just through his will and his determination and just his competitiveness, like I've never met a guy more competitive and more driven and just loved the daily fight more than he did, and he took the thing. So you guys all saw it, right? 88, they win an NIT. 90, they get to the final 8 and they have in UConn, they call like the dream season with Scott Burrell, Tate George, and
Sure.
and those guys, right? So by the time 91, 92, 93, they're doing Sweet 16s, Elite Eights. And I get there, 94, 95, they had like Donyell Marshall had just left, but we were bringing back Ray Allen, Daron Sheffer, Donnie Marshall, Kevin Ollie, Travis Knight. Like that thing is loaded, you know? And I tell people all the time, like I was so blessed because I get there at like, I'm 29 years old. And this thing is like Coach Calhoun had to probably be what, like 40, 45 or something like
Yeah.
that. You know, he's in the middle of his career and the thing is about ready to stay steady for 25 next 25, 30 years, you know? So I owe everything to him, but the competitive drive, fellas, is the first thing to me. Like I learned how hard you have to compete on a daily basis. And you guys all know Howie Dickerman, right? Who was his
Oh
assistant.
yeah, I know how
Yep.
he was at Canisius, and he recruited me
Yeah.
at Canisius.
Okay, another legend, right? I mean, just one of the best. How he used to say, like, Jim's not happy unless he's pissed off. Like he he wakes up in the morning with his fist balled, right? Like, who am I going to fight today? Like, is it my administration? Is it the media? Is it somebody over to a recruit? Is it whatever? Like, is it a ref? Is it a fan? Is it like, you know, it was just like it was that level of intensity needed as a coach, and that competitive fire was the biggest thing I learned from him.
Yeah, I mean, what are the similarities now? You got two fiery guys you're working with. You know, you're with Danny now, to back-to-back championships. You know, everybody has seen his act from when he played to when he went to Rhode Island and now here at UConn. And you know, he's kind of dialed it back a little bit, but not entirely.
Mhm.
So what are the similarities and the differences between Coach Calhoun and Coach Hurley?
You know what, Chuck? They're like, I try to say this to people without it sounding like confusing. They're very different people, but their core principles are exactly the same. Like
Yeah,
how they live their lives. They are so focused on their program. It's like their lives are simple. All right. It's like it's ironic too that they both have a wife and two boys. You know, so it was like Coach was like, I call her Mrs. C to this day. Mrs. C and Jim and Jeff, his two boys, and Dan is Andrea and little Danny and Andrew. Like that is it's them and it's their program. Like they're consumed with their families and their programs. Like that's it. 365 days a year. And it doesn't mean like Tommy Amaker asked me this one time. We were on a plane coming back from a recruiting thing, and he was at Seton Hall, I think, at the time. And he was just like, "What do you think? What makes Coach Calhoun so good?" And I was like, you know, he's there, like he's there with his team or for his team all the time. It's like an all the time. It's spring, summer, fall. No, it's easy. You guys both know it's easy for your coach to be present during the season, right? There's an
sure.
amount of time that they have to be there, 7 days a week, practice games, whatever. But like he is there like off season. That's where the relationships get built. And Dan's the exact same way. Like we have
Yeah.
our kids, we already started summer one. We started our workouts on Monday this week. And Dan will be at UConn every single day that our players are at UConn. So we work like 11 months of the year. If the players are on campus, like we're on campus. And you know, sometimes he has to go recruiting for 2 days in July, but he'll make
Yep.
sure the workouts are like, if we got to go recruit Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're working out with the guys Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You know, like he will see them the maximum amount of time he can see them. And that's where like people ask me all the time, like, why do the kids play so hard for Coach Calhoun? Why do they play so hard for Dan? Is they know like both of the guys are invested in them. You know, like they put so much time in with them. There's that sweat equity that both of those guys put in that the kids love them, you know, and they can, so therefore, and they, you know, I'll tell you one thing too, where they're really different is Dan is relentlessly demanding of our guys in practice, and he's much more empowering of those guys in games. Whereas Coach Calhoun was consistently tough in practice, but Coach Calhoun was really hard on our guys in games. Like he would like during games, he would really drive guys. And you know, it really toughened our guys' skin. But that's the only approach I'd say is a little bit different. And you know, Danny's maybe just probably a little more of a modern philosophy to how you handle kids. And coach was brought up in a different, sort of a different older generation where you could push guys in game more and really be demonstrative and really be loud and really be challenging during games.
I was a little surprised when we had Coach Calhoun on, Tom, how close he is with his guys
Yes,
even
I was just
now.
going to say that.
Yeah. I mean, he was so, because he doesn't put that off, in when you see him in games and when you see him out in public, he's kind of sometimes a little standoffish, but everybody that we've had on, loves the guy and would run through a wall for the guy. I mean, and that all goes to what you were saying, being there and developing those relationships.
Yeah.
How difficult is that now in the new age that we're in college basketball? How difficult is building the relationships now if the kid's not going to be there? Well, you don't even know until you know, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's tricky, Chuck. Like what Dan does, I think, a really good job is that he's really transparent in the recruiting process. He'll tell you, this is the role we see for you. This is how, we envision your career going. He doesn't talk like bullshit to kids that he doesn't see as being lock NBA guys, and not every guy we recruit do we think on the way in like they're going to the NBA. We'd like them all to, but like there are some kids you sort of bring in for a role, especially now in the portal. You might have a kid only for 1 year, and the kid Joey Calcaterra, who played for us a couple of years ago. We needed one more piece off the bench that could shoot, and Dan's transparent with him. This is what the role I see for you. This is where I think it's going to be. This is how we could benefit you. You could benefit us. And I think if you're upfront and you're honest with these guys, and like I said, if you pour into them all the time, the relationships build quickly. But to your point, Chuck, that like the days of, I think and Dan at his core is a lot like his dad. He's about player development. Like he would love it to be everybody stay 4 years. I'm going to get you better because it's where he thinks he thinks we pass a lot of the programs in the summer. Like that's where he thinks and it sounds corny, it sounds cliche, but he's just like, we hear stories about other high major programs that they can come in for half the summer. When they're in, the assistant coaches run workouts and just do some light shooting. And he's like, no, we get 4 hours a week. Like I'm going to be their head coach 4 hours a week. Like we're putting stuff in and I'm going to be in front of them. I'm going to be messaging them. I'm going to be he's not as intense in the summer as he is during the year because there's not that immediacy of a game, but that sweat equity is built in the spring, summer, and fall on the court with those guys. So that's where I think our relationships build pretty quickly. But to your point, Chuck, you don't know because we've had some kids we've loved in the last year or two that have left because with the portal being so easy to immediately transfer and make some NIL money, and maybe you're going to play a little more, kids attempted to leave.
Yeah. I was going to say, talking about Coach Calhoun, Karan Butler spoke of him literally as a father, like him having a child and all the similarities in their lives, which you would never put together. And just, it was just heartfelt. So I want to ask you though, when you start, so you come into the third position, as you said, restricted earnings. What was your role like? What was the expectations for you?
Sonny, when he had his staff set up, back then only 2 guys could go on the road recruiting.
Right.
It was an NCAA rule. So I did all the scouting reports and I did the summer camp. So I ran his camp. So basically I did every single scout. So as soon as one ended, I got to have the next one ready to go. And it was like a 7-day-a-week grind during the season. And then I was telling someone this story the other day. You guys remember camp and, Coach Massimino, Coach Payne, camp. You guys were either there working it or whatever. That was a chance for a restricted earnings guy to make some money.
Make some money.
Coach Calhoun would say to me, Roy Williams did it famously, for Dean Smith way back. And Coach Calhoun would say to me, hey, the more you can, the less people you can hire and the more tasks you can take on, you're going to get more of the money. So as soon as the Final Four ended, I was April, May, June into July, just planning those 3 weeks and grinding that way. So, but it was good though, Sonny, because the neat thing was to do that. I did that from 94, 95 to I think 2000 and 2001 was the year I got bumped up. So it was 6 years of doing that. I got bumped up from the 3rd to the 2nd spot with him. And I thought it really, they say iron sharpens iron. I thought it really prepared me I could present in front of a team. Here's the scout, here's the walkthrough. This is how we're going to play somebody. I could talk about the video, like I could get in front of a team and point things out on video. And that critical analysis of teams, it helped me when I became a head coach at Quinnipiac down the line.
So I got to ask you, since you talked about scouting report, what was your scouting report on Syracuse? Let me hear
it. Luke Murray and I had some fun the other day. Okay, because Luke's a fact checker and Luke is always ready with his phone to call something up. And in 2003, with Syracuse won the national championship.
That was a good year for us, yeah.
Yes, with Carmelo and with Jerry
Mack, yeah.
And Hakeem Warwick, right?
Yep.
And was it Pace and those
Josh
guys?
Pace,
Yeah,
Greg Forth, yeah.
Greg Forth,
yeah.
yep.
Greg Forth was a center.
Yeah. I was like,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Queth, Duaney, yeah.
Yes. I was like, yeah, Luke, like, so Luke is like sort of talking shit to me that like, yeah, Syracuse, this and that. I'm like, yeah, check the scores. We beat them both time we played them. And Luke is a big Carmelo fan, as am I, but I wasn't going to like, he's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, and we locked Carmelo up too. It was my scout. So he quickly gets to the phone, and maybe because I'm a generation older than him, Sonny, I lose track sometimes that people can find stuff like this. Wait a minute. It says here Carmelo at 34 and 28 in the 2 games and stuff, But no, it was funny. Like the zone was the zone, and we would work on things when we were playing them. You had to have your wrinkles, and you knew sort of what they would come out of it. Sometimes they trapped the short corners, sometimes they wouldn't. They had that run and jump out of timeouts where they trap you on the first pass, like over midcourt after certain timeouts. You had to have like, your quick hitters, your motion zone actions, and then some quick hitting zone actions. But offensively, he was always very good at isolating the players that he wanted. I thought he did a really good job of getting the guys he wanted the right shots. It always seemed like the shot distribution went to the right players. So you had to be on top of who was going to get it and try to figure out where the double teams were going to come. And I thought he always put his great players, in the right spots on the floor where it made it hard. Like we couldn't get at Carmelo. He had him on the elbows and stuff, and it's hard to double him in those spots. And but Coach Boeheim, I think in a weird way, is underrated, to be honest with you. Just a brilliant basketball mind.
Funny story. There's a St. Benedict had a huge coaching clinic. I don't know if Danny was a coach at the time. He might have been. And they had the cream of the cream of all the coaches. Well, Coach Boeheim comes in, he does the 2-3 zone. Well, Calhoun comes right after him. He said, all right, put your clipboards down. Here's how you beat that stupid zone. And he went over a couple of things. I was dying. I'd never seen anybody do that. It was just, I'm not knowing him that well. That's just got to be him, though. It was funny.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Mike Hopkins and I became really close when we were on the road recruiting, and we would tell Coach Calhoun and Coach Boeheim stories back and forth and laugh all day.
So who was the guy that, every team, like when on the teams that Sonny played on at Syracuse, it was Bernie Fine. He was the guy that everybody goes to. On our team, it was probably Marty Marbach, who had that position that you were talking about a minute ago, Tom. Who was that guy for the UConn team back when you were with Coach?
Chuck, Marty Marbach ended up at Canisius, correct?
Yeah, he did.
Didn't he? Yeah, I remember that. Because I was at BU as a student when Marty was coaching Canisius. In the old, I think they called it the NAC. It was like the North Atlantic Conference.
I think so,
like
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that Coach Massimino's tree had a lot of guys like that, right? Paul Cormier came up from out there, obviously.
Paul was in New Hampshire. He was at New Hampshire and Vermont, I believe.
And Fairfield.
Fairfield.
Dartmouth. Yep.
Mitch Bonaguro.
Yes. John Leonard too, right? Manhattan.
Yep. John. Who else? Pete Gillen. Yep. Mike Fratello.
Yep.
Some good ones.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Jay's probably the biggest one. So
yes. Back then, I think it was Carl Hobbs had a great rapport with the guards. He's one of the best guard coaches I've ever been around. Great feel for it. He got very close to and that was his position, you know, he was a positional coach for the backcourt guys. He got very close to those guys. So they would go to him a lot. Coach D was he was the big guy coach, and he was very prideful of their
Yeah,
performance.
Howie. Yeah.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time with those guys. I think I was initially in those teams in the 2000s. Once I got like, I was a recruiter in 2000, 2001. I got on the road. Like the guys that I was close with were, you know, that was like Rashad Anderson, Denham Brown, Rudy Gay, AJ Price, like Hilton
AJ,
Armstrong,
yeah.
Jeff Adrian, those guys. Like I was there till '07. And it was probably me. Like Marcus Williams said that we were on a Zoom with the team, and coach said to Marcus Williams, no, Dan Hurley said to Marcus Williams, like this was during COVID, and we were just connecting our UConn guys to the past. And we were doing a lot of Zoom stuff. Marcus spoke, and coach put me on the spot with Marcus. He's like, how was Coach Moore back in the day? You know, how did he help you and stuff? And Marcus, like, he was the guy I'd always go to when Coach Calhoun would rip me to shreds, and I needed a little confidence boost, you know? So I felt like and it's true, like Coach Calhoun was so strong and so demanding of those guys. Coach D was very demanding of the big guys. You try to like figure out your role on a staff and how you're going to balance everything. You can't, and even now, like with the staff, I think because I have perspective in my 10 years when I was a head coach at Quinnipiac, like I was on my guys, like, and I was like the bad cop. And then you see it through a different lens when you go back to being an assistant. Like Dan is relentlessly tough on our guys, like I said, in practice. Kamani Young, our associate head coach, who's going to be a terrific head coach, he's really demanding of the guards. And Luke Murray, who's going to be a terrific head coach someday, he
Yeah.
has the bigs and he is all over those guys. So I'm the nice guy, you know, like I'm the guy now on this staff that they sort of like, I can pick them up on the baseline. And the other reason I think they like me too is like I'm the guy who sort of runs the NIL. So I come to them with like
Yeah,
I
right.
come to with good opportunities to maybe make money. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's talk about the recruiting now versus then, because I know you were instrumental in getting Okafor and some of those guys from that championship team, right? I mean, so talk about what that's like. I know you still are on the road going to, these big tournaments, the Boo Williams and all that kind of stuff, down in Kentucky and everything.
Mhm.
But how different is it now? Versus like a high school kid that's playing AAU tournaments versus looking at film after film after film of guys that were in the portal. How does that work now versus the way it was back then?
It's amazing, Chuck. Like I've had to change my perspective a lot because when I first got to UConn, I saw two conflicting styles of the way guys could be great recruiters. Howie Dickerman was the type of guy who
Yeah,
wanted to cast a wide net. He wanted lists, like he wanted a lot of options and a lot of names. He wanted us to touch and get a hands on and get a feel for like a lot of kids. Carl Hobbs was much more like surgical. Carl was like, I mean, I'll never forget. Carl came into one meeting and Coach D's like, give me names. Let's get. In the old days, you'd have like a flip board, those
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Big easel.
tripods.
Yeah. Big
Yeah, the
post-it
big easel, and you'd flip them, and you get here's the ones, the twos, the threes, and Howie wants names. He wants 10 names under each column, and Carl was like, I'm going to recruit Richard Hamilton, Kobe Bryant, and like Baron Davis, and I'm going to get one of them. So like that's what I'm going to do, and that's what Carl did. Like Carl got great players, but he focused on just a small group. Whereas Coach D got great players by like really working a lot of guys and then like whittling it down. Because I was more of a Coach D type of guy. I like to have a lot of names. So Coach Calhoun was comfortable going either way as long as we got results. But Coach wanted like no one was better than Coach Calhoun, I would say in the old days, from like the spring of their junior years through their junior summers into that fall. Because remember, like Chuck and Sonny, like
yeah,
remember kids would go for the summer to these camps. They'd set up fall official visits, take
Yes.
3 or 4 of them on the weekends of September, October, November, and then you did slew of commitments like October, November, like everyone's committing, and like all the top 100 kids go within like a 3 or 4 week period. Well, Coach Calhoun was awesome at like make sure we have if we got small forwards and we got to get one, make sure we got a shot at like 5 different guys, make me watch them in July for those like 20 days. I'll prioritize which ones they are and I'll take it from there. And then he would like attack that top guy and their family and their people. And it was really effective for us that way. Nowadays, I mean, we had to, then you had the time. Then I'm at Quinnipiac, which when we were a low major league, we were in the Northeast Conference. Then we were sort of a mid major when we were in the MAC. And you have to cast a wide net when you're at that level. Like you have to have a
Right.
lot of guys, like, because you're trying for a couple above you, but you have to know that you're not going to, you may go 0 for 10 on some of the guys above you. And you got to be ready to have a bunch of backup plans too. So I recruited hard and a lot of time. And like, I still had that as a head coach. I still had that assistant coach's mentality because I like to recruit a lot of guys. But now we've gotten to the point where we don't even, I mean, with the portal, it's like it's super intense in like a month-long period. Like you said, Chuck, where like you're watching kids, guys' names appear, you throw them up, you're watching their synergy. And in a way, it's sort of easier because it's more condensed. And the other thing is you're watching them play Division One. You're watching them at 19 or 20 play Division One basketball. What your eyes are showing you is like sort of like even if they're at a mid or a low major, they're playing against men. They're playing against kids that we're going to be playing against, you know? It's not a 17-year-old or 16-year-old that's an upside play and you don't know if he's going to develop one way or the other. So I think you can make a more accurate assessment out of the portal on how a kid's going to do than the high school kid. So to answer your question, like we're doing so much less and less sophomores, less juniors. You know, we're almost like we're focusing on the senior class as they finish their junior year. And we
Right.
get to this like April live period. And now we got a couple June live periods in July. We'll lock in on this class of 2025 really hard. And now in the old days, you had to like be on these guys as freshmen and sophomores.
I
That's
guess you have to be able to pivot whenever something happens because you don't know if somebody jumps in the portal and all of a sudden he's gone. Now you go, oh shit! Now I got to go find one of a power forward, say, or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
You know what it's done for us, Chuck? It's like Dan's become even more selective with the high school kids. Like,
yeah.
you
I
know,
guess you have to be.
because, yeah, you feel like the portal can always, someone good will come in the portal that you can potentially get late. So he's like, you're super, I'd say, selective with who you could look at as a high school kid. And then
Yeah.
we've been spoiled, like, and I'm sure Villanova had this, Syracuse, Sonny, like with their great teams. When you're like Jim Boeheim or you Jay Wright or you Dan Hurley, and you coach like a national championship team, and you got like we had 5 dudes that could have maybe gone to the NBA like this year, right? You know,
Sure.
and then you go and you watch EYBL or Adidas or Under Armour, literally like 2 weeks after you just coached a team that rolled through the NCAA tournament, and you're sitting there and you're like, man, the gap between these 17-year-old kids and what I just coached is
Yeah.
so severe. Like Dan's not looking to like offer a ton of these guys or go chase a ton of these guys. He's like, my tastes are spoiled. Like I need to recruit, like they got to be great players for us to recruit them, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, we're not out there with too many offers or running around like chasing too many kids.
You
I want to
did
ask you a
pretty. Go
question
ahead, son.
on
Mhm.
this because it's interesting. I mean, I coached AAU with my daughters, and got involved with starting a program here in our Binghamton area for the girls, and a lot of it, was starting to be built up. Like, hey, you got to make a highlight tape, you got to do this, and I was always a big fan of seeing kids play in real pressure game situations where games are really meaningful. How do you guys weigh that? So take the high school season where every game matters, right? And
Mhm.
take the AAU tournament where they're playing 4 games no matter what.
Mm.
How much stock do you put in those different things? I've heard Oriema talk about this, but what is it like, in reality for you looking at players?
What's hard, Sonny, with it, it's hard time-wise to be, in my opinion, to put a lot of energy into their high school seasons because the time commitment of somebody like Dan Hurley or Kyle Neptune or, or Coach Calhoun, even when he was coaching and stuff, it's just like um, during the season, if they're putting everything into their teams, you just can't, even if you have a private plane, it's hard to get out and like, all right, say there's a kid in Jersey that's playing on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and we happen to have a practice, 12 to 4, or something like that, where we're going to like show video, we're going to practice, we're going to do some post-practice stuff. He wants to meet with a kid, and bang, there's a private plane waiting for him. He's going to take him down to Teterboro. He's going to jump in a car. He's going to watch this kid at 9 o'clock, 9:15, back on the plane, back up there home, and it's like midnight. Like you're burnt, and the
Yeah.
next day you come in with as much, even with a private plane, right? Like you come in the next day with as much pop or as much like, and Dan is like, I want to be as good as I can be for these kids every night, and it might mean the difference when like he can watch an extra game of ours instead of being at that high school kids game. He could watch, Luke Murray has a lot of like offensive ideas from the European leagues. And he might say, Dan, I downloaded like 20 different sets from the Euro League the other night on your laptop. So Dan could rather like go home, I'll have a nice meal with Andrea. I'm going to hang out with Andrew. 9 o'clock, he might be sitting there like, I'm going to watch some EuroLeague stuff. I'm going to watch a game. I might watch my brother Bob. I'm in bed at midnight and I'm not like burnt, and tomorrow, like I'm better. I'm a better head coach tomorrow for UConn this year than I am investing that time and energy in a kid,
Right.
that we're recruiting. So Dan is just like, once the season starts, like Dan's a great recruiter because he's honest and he's engaging and he's funny and people are attracted to him, but he's really good in the spring, summer, and fall. Once the season starts, he's really like, you got to like beg him to take some time because there's just no free time. And then when you guys know the grind of it, when we do
Yeah.
get like a Sunday off in the regular season and we don't have to go into the office and we actually might have a full day off where you could like go to church, have like family lunch, watch a football game and be like a normal person. And then if we go to him and say like, there's a triple header down at Rice, that the hoop group's putting on, and you could see 3 good sophomores. It's just like, yeah, all right, I'll go to it, but I'm going to be a zombie because I just worked like 13 straight days. And so it's hard. I just think it's hard. I think the physical toll, the mental toll, I just think it's easier. You do lose, to your point, Sonny, see these guys in a tight game that means a lot against a high school rival. But I think the trade-off is just like physical well-being, energy, focus on your current team. I think you got to weigh all that. And I think to your point, I think one of the things I did poorly in my last couple years at Quinnipiac, because I was there 10 years and we had pretty good success my first 8. And then I got a new AD and we had 2 awful years and I ended up getting fired, and in the last 2 years where our team wasn't very good, you try to almost try harder. And I was like, I was trying. I think one of the things I would have done differently is try to go from practice to recruiting more in those last couple of years to maybe just focusing more on the last 2 teams and having more energy for them. But it
makes sense.
Yeah.
Really does.
Interesting perspective. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that versus like we talked about the portal. I mean, you guys did pretty good in the portal this year. You got Cam Spencer came in and was instrumental in helping you get the second chip. I mean,
Danny talked about that at Big East Media Day.
And you know what? I got to tell you, Tom,
Yep.
Sonny and I went to Big East Media Day.
Yep.
It was the first time, our buddy John Paquette hooked us up.
Yep.
And we got to talk to every one of your kids that was there.
Yep.
And I got to tell you,
impressive.
These kids, we were very impressed with the quality of kids that are on that UConn team. I mean, listen, a lot of the kids talk, that's what they're there for. But these guys were genuinely into it. We were able to kid around with them and they kidded back with us, we
there
had
was a lot of attention. There was a lot of attention.
and everybody, they're coming off a national championship and now it's 2. Yeah. And they were such gentlemen and such, good representatives of the university. I mean, I just thought it was great, man. And
thank you.
Hats off to you guys for that. I know that's a lot of work.
Walking around with a cast on his foot,
Yeah, Donovan. Yeah, Donovan.
And it was like, it really was. They were truly like, I was like, generations, everybody complains about younger generations. I said, we're good. Our generations are fine.
Yeah.
Meet some of these kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tell you what, I don't have to look up to too many people, Tom. But it's funny, and I told Donovan this. I've seen you guys play a half a dozen times,
Yeah.
and every time I go with somebody says to me, "Are you bigger than that guy, or is he bigger than you? You bigger than?" So I look deadpan right into the camera and said, "I can tell you right now, this guy's bigger than." And I'm looking up at him, and I'm going, "I don't get to do that very often. That's for
Yeah.
sure."
Yeah. Chuck,
Big broad shoulders.
So
Yeah.
so now that we open the door for this, let's get into the current state of affairs at UConn with this past team. The kid that impressed me was your freshman Castle, and his uncle is Ollie Taylor, who played at Seton Hall, and we had Ollie on.
Yeah.
And
That
he,
little nugget.
and he spoke, very well of the kid, and we watched him, all year long. Of course, I must have seen about 10 or 12 of your games between Big East regular play and the playoffs and stuff. And man, he's got a motor, man. He'll make a good pro, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah. I was on today, Chuck, with a scout from Memphis, and they have the 3rd pick. So they were like, he's like, and I talk to him every year. He's just one of my old friends. And he's like, I need a lot of time on Donovan and Steph, because Donovan's range, we're hearing Atlanta has the 1st pick, and they had Donovan in for 2 days, and he did really well. There's like a pathway where they could even take him. Donovan seems like it's like 1 through 7. Steph, it seems like it's 3 through 8 or 9 or 10 or something. You hear different things, but I spent a long time talking about him today to the guy from Memphis, and like the kid, his dad is Stacy Castle, and he grew up in Queens with our associate head coach, Kamani Young. And that's where the relationship came from. Stacy was a great player in Queens, went to Wake Forest around the same time Rodney Rogers was there, and then played 2 years with Rodney Rogers, transferred to Central Florida. He ends up getting married, and they raised their family in Atlanta. And so that's where Steph came from. And boy, I tell you, what a great kid. By the end of the year, Chuck, I felt he was in my opinion, you don't see everybody, but I thought he was the best perimeter defender in the country. His size, shoulders, chest, like competitiveness, athleticism, and like in IQ for defense, like his closeouts, understand the scouting report. We put him on the best wing perimeter players in the Big East, game in and game out. And whether it was a point-ish type guy or a 3-4 type of guy, like he played Terrence Shannon from Illinois. And then we had him like on Desmond Claude. And then we had him on like Trey Alexander from Creighton. We had him, and it was like whoever, we had him on Devin Carter, like we would just, and this is a freshman, guys with tricks, guys who are older, like guys who can get you in foul trouble. That kid grew up so quickly, and he's a good shooter. He's a better shooter than people think he is. He's got every pass because physically he's tall and strong enough. Like you saw him throw to Samson Johnson and to Donovan on the rim rolls. Like he's got the lob. He can throw that hook pass to the opposite corner off a pick and roll that the NBA teams like so much.
That's a tough one to make.
That's a tough.
Oh my word. Yeah, Sonny, but he's big and strong. Like he takes it and throws it. He's good in transition, and he made just enough threes during the Big East play where people had to sort of play him. Like I remember we played St. John's in the Garden in a regular season game. He ended up with 20, 23 points or something. But man, like they were playing off him because when you were guarding us this year, you had to give up something. They were off him a little bit. Man, he bangs. He steps into his first 2 threes. His whole body like changed. You knew he was going to have a great day. And that kid's like great, great kid, great parents, like humble. I said to the guy from Memphis today, I've never met a kid who was more hyped coming into college, 5-star kid, McDonald's All-American, potential one and done, NBA mock drafts, but have more humility, carry himself with more humility throughout the year. Like here's a funny inside story. Dan, again, like I told you, like Dan relentlessly every day in practice brings it. You cannot make a mistake in our practice. Like managers can't make a mistake. Like coaches can't make a mistake. People at the clock can't make. He picks up everything in practice, and he is on Steph every single day because he knew he could take it. Kamani Young, who recruited him and is a position coach, Kamani's on him every single day, right? Every day. So here's my role again. I'm just picking up the pieces like, hey man, like you're pretty good. Like, don't worry about it, But like I think the last 5 road games we were gonna play, at wherever it was, at Creighton, at St. John's, at Providence, towards the end of the year, heading off to the Big East tournament. The day we were about to go get on the plane, we were going to finish practice and get to the plane. Dan threatened, like, I'm going to leave your ass back here. I'm not taking you, like, to Steph. Like, you're not going on this trip. I'm suspending you. And I would say to Steph at the end of practice, like, what do you think, man? Do you think you can get on the plane? Like, you think he's going to let you jump on the bus and get on the plane and stuff and go? But like, that's how demanding Dan was of him. But he did it because the kid was super mature and could handle it. Like Steph was like really, really mature, really poised. And he just really grew as the season went on and took to coaching. And he's gonna have a great NBA career. It's gonna be
I tell you who else impressed was Tristan.
Yeah.
Man, he can really go too. And Cam. I mean, we talked to both those guys at Media Day, and Cam's got such a quick release on his shot. Holy cow. I mean, I haven't seen a guy in a long time get his shot off in traffic with that quick bang. You better be up on him. And even then, you might not stand a chance,
Yeah.
But way more than a shooter. Way more
Way
than
more.
just a
Yeah.
shooter. He handled the ball.
Oh,
He
yeah.
penetrated.
Yep.
He was way more than just a shooter.
Oh,
Because I
yeah.
remember Danny talking about, well, we needed a shooter, and Cam was like a perfect fit in the portal.
Yep.
And so I was expecting to see like, that really just locked down just a shooter.
Yeah.
And he did so much more. He defended.
My word.
I was impressed with his sneaky athleticism.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what he had, Chuck? What he had going on was you're filling over Jay Wright, like play off 2 feet. Like he was great
he
at
good.
getting
Yep.
in the lane and landing and faking, stepping through, counter. Like he was like Gillespie, like that type of player too, like very much like that. Like he understood how he could gain an advantage over quicker, bigger guys from like landing, slowing down. He never got sped up. And it's interesting, his brother was like the best lacrosse player in the country for 3 years. And Cam played
right?
was growing up. Yeah. His brother, Pat Spencer, was like the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy winner for 3 years in a row in lacrosse. He's Pat Spencer, a huge name. And now he's actually playing basketball with the Warriors in the G League. But Cam said he played a ton of lacrosse growing up. And I said to him at the end of the year, I'm watching film and I'm like, you know what I really appreciate with you? When you're weaving through traffic in transition, your assist turnover ratio was like 3 or 4 to 1. I go, you never lose the ball for someone who like people don't think he was like had it on a string. I go, but you protect the ball well. And he goes, you know what? He goes, when I was an offensive player in lacrosse growing up and I made a turnover in lacrosse, if you're playing offense and the other team gets a turnover off you and they run the other way, you can't run past midfield to help your team. I guess the way lacrosse goes is like if you're deemed an offensive player,
you're on attack.
On that end. And he goes, it used to drive me crazy. If I gave it up, I couldn't do anything about it on the other end. I had to watch my defenseman try to like clean up. So he goes, a lot of that has to do with that. And then to your point about Tristan Newton, like I love that kid, just a gamer, big time shots, always came up clutch. And it was amazing too, fellas, like you talk about Danny Hurley, Jersey City, fiery. I'm going to bring like all this emotion and passion out of you. And you take Tristan Newton, like El Paso, Texas, chill, low key, like, yeah. And like Dan was like, for the longest time, their first year together, Dan was like, I got to draw this out of him. And Tristan was like, I'm not like that, but like, and it took them a while to like get on the same page. But when they did, it was like beautiful, and Tristan he made so many big shots for us. He was so consistent, so complete. Just a great player and a great kid.
How about this season?
He talked specifically about that. He said he didn't have the playbook down as well as he should have. I mean, he was brutally honest with his assessment of dealing with coach, but where coach was in the right and how he was better prepared and would be better prepared. And as it showed, he was better prepared for what lay in front of him. So really true honesty was the calling card of the day for sure.
Yeah.
What
Sorry.
about this year coming up, Tom? You have the horses. We know you got good news, I guess. Alex is coming back, Caravan is coming back, right?
Yep.
So who did you bring in? Talk about some of the guys that you're bringing in either as freshmen or off the portal this year.
Yep. Yep. Liam McNeely is probably the biggest name and maybe the most ready in terms of talent. He's a high school senior
I've
who
heard
went to
that name.
Montverde Academy, played with Cooper Flag
Yep.
on the
Okay.
Montverde Academy team. And he's from Dallas, Texas. Really can shoot at about 6'7", 3'4", can really shoot. And he's got a really high offensive IQ and he's got a lot of moxie, like for a kid. He's had a lot of success and a healthy self-belief, which is important if you're going to go to a program like UConn and try to be a contributor as a freshman. You can't be like this, like wilting flower and go into the cauldron of like what we're about to go into, as the hunted. He's about it, right? Alex obviously will be tremendous for us, but like we also brought in a Taris Reed, who is a transfer from Michigan, a center, big, strong kid with a lot of upside, 6'9", probably like 250, 260, and a little bit like Adama Sanogo.
Oh,
And
okay.
he'll be nice, like with Samson Johnson, we think they'll play off each other pretty well, like, at the 5 for us. And we took a kid named Aiden Mahaney, who's a transfer from St. Mary's, California. He a terrific combo guard. He can really shoot, a little like Cam, he's sort of like, I was saying today, he's sort of a cross between Joey Calcaterra, who he took from the West Coast from out San Diego 2 years ago, and Cam Spencer. He can shoot it. He can play on the ball. He's got some toughness about to him too as well. He's really been a high level player at St. Mary's. I think he was the West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year his first year. We played against him, ironically, in the second round in 2023 up in Albany. So we're very familiar with him. We took another freshman, Ahmad Noel from Philly, who's a point guard, and a wing, Isaiah Abraham, too, as well, from Paul VI down in DC. But, we couple those guys with Jalen Stewart, I think will make a big jump in our sophomore class. Solomon Ball and Jaden Ross also in our sophomore class could make big jumps. And then Hassan Diarra and Samson Johnson were the other guys that were, like more role players last year that we're just going to need more out of. So we think we got a lot of pieces. It's going to be fun to coach them, and we're excited to see which way the team goes.
Can I
The
ask
one
about like some of your pregame or your practice rituals? What I love it because when I was a coach, I tried to do a lot of that. The ball handling, the glasses, it reminds me a little bit of Beeline style and stuff like that. Talk about, for people who don't know or haven't seen, talk a little bit about just the level of depth of detail of what people would consider too simplistic or too basic, but you guys drill it every day.
Yeah. I think a couple things on that, Sonny. Like he really got into the thing where like he wants those guys' hands warmed up when we start practice. Like he doesn't want them fumbling the ball with us doing like a 5-on-5 thing right out of the shoot. He doesn't want them fumbling the ball, even if we're just shooting. So he has them doing the ball handling stuff 4 or 5 minutes every day. Boom. And Dan leads it. Like he leads everything in practice. This is no the assistants run this or this and that. Like there's like an 8-minute break maybe where we call it bigs and littles, and Kamani has the guards down one end and Luke has the guards at the bigs at the other end, and like they'll work on some things, but he's at both ends while that's happening. But like we do that almost every day. We start with some type of ball handling, we mix up what we're doing and we move them around some days we keep them stationary. But it goes back to, it's very much like a Coach Hurley senior
Right.
St. Anthony's practice. Yeah,
Yeah.
he saw it work for so many years, and it's like he's about player development, and he's been in the gym. Like that's what I try to tell families when they're thinking of coming here, and I'm talking to parents, and I'm like, your son's career is precious. Like you want to put it in the hands. It's going to be the head coach. Like what head coach you're going to put your son's career in the hands of? Well, this dude has been in a gym, like observing a master class since he was like 2 years old. Like who has a father who's a Hall of Famer and a brother who arguably might have been the greatest college point guard, in the history of our sport, or the winningest, right? And he was with those two 7 days a week. Like Bobby had a great quote. Bobby Jr. had a great quote in one of those documentaries about growing up a Hurley. And it was sort of like, there really wasn't a lot of time where we weren't either playing basketball, practicing basketball, watching basketball, or thinking about basketball, And so, I mean, Dan sees so much. His mind moves so quickly, both in the practice court and like in the game, that I think what you're seeing is just like it's almost like the um the book with Malcolm Gladwell, is it
Yeah.
where the Outliers,
Yeah.
where
Outliers.
10,000 hours that you
10,000
craft.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he is like it's genius to watch him like sort of see things so quickly and react so quickly. You guys have both coached, so you understand that's the secret sauce. It's not the drill, it's not it's like, how do you react? All right, your star player just said something stupid to a teammate, right? This guy that always hustles isn't hustling today. Like, and all eyes are on you as the head coach. Like, what are you going to do about it in the moment? And Dan's just got uncanny feel at how to handle all those situations.
Dan gets the 10,000 steps award too, by the way. He gets those in
He's
every game.
everywhere.
Oh
He
my
gets
word.
them, especially during the game. When he crosses half court, I'm like, okay, it's on.
So
Yeah.
one of the things, Tom, that we've come across since we've been doing this is some teams are very close and have that culture where their guys come back. Providence has that. We have that at Nova. That's a famous thing about the Villanova culture and everything. And I think UConn has that as well. There's a lot of guys.
Yep.
We got pretty close with Chris Smith and
Yeah, we are.
and some of the other guys that played, and John Gwynn and a whole bunch of them, and they all come back. How great is that you got all your guys? Now, listen, it's easy when you're winning games, and you're winning championships, okay? But what do you guys do to nurture that so that the guys do come back? Is that something that Danny is conscious of and that they do deliberately? Do you have events to bring the guys back, or is it, do you recognize them at games? What do you do with those guys when they come back? Because it's impressive, because it's a big list of stars that come back for your games.
Yeah. Thanks. I think it happens a little more organically. I wish I could say there's like this master formula or how we do it. I don't think we could be better at it even, right? Like we'll go to another play. Like we went to Kansas this year and played at Allen Fieldhouse for the first time. And their game day stuff is on point. It is as good. The tradition and what they do and how they present it and package it is as good as I've ever seen. 37 years of going on the road. Like, there is an aura and a mystique at that place that's like undeniable. Ours happens, I think, a little more just naturally. I think it has a lot to do, Chuck, with it. Like, when our guys are during the years they're at UConn, we have no pro sports teams. So there's nothing else in the state. And I think they're idolized, and I think they're like made to feel so good about themselves while they're there, that there's this natural pull to want to come back. And we've done a pretty good job, like when they do come back, of like, hey, stand and acknowledge somebody and stuff, and bring them out to midcourt and have them throw T-shirts to the crowd. And Dan has been really good about embracing the old guys. Like, whenever we know someone's there, you got to come to the locker room after the game, like hang out and come to the locker room. And then he'll be like, talk to the team. What do you got? You got any words of wisdom? What do you have? And it goes so long, then you get them a couple T-shirts or whatever. And just that, like, they feel loved and they feel wanted. I still think we got to do a better job with some of the guys who were even older than the Coach Calhoun, like the Dom Perno years.
Yeah.
And years before that. We could be better at that, I think, like, because a lot of people, the narrative at UConn is like, some people feel like, oh, it started with in '86 when Coach Calhoun got there. But we were talking before we got on. There were guys, Mike McKay, Earl Kelly, like Carl Hobbs, like there were guys going back, Jim Abramaitis and Bruce Kaczynski,
Chuck Alexanis and Corny.
Corny and all those guys, right? Like there were the late Tony Hansen who passed away a couple of years ago. Like and that's where D Rowe, when he was alive and he was with us, he did a great job of being that connected to like the 60s and 70s and the 80s, But I think it's because the memories they have. Like, I'll share this story with you guys. Khalid El-Amin came back. Coach Calhoun used to have an alumni game every other year in August. And the guys loved coming back for that. It was down at Mohegan Sun Casino. And the guys that would have fun. They'd gamble and they'd play in a game and they'd catch up. And there was a great weekend. They played golf and the whole thing. Khalid came back one year for that, and he hadn't been in Gamble in 10 or 15 years. So he came up to campus to see the new practice facility, and I'm showing him around. And then I'm like, let's take a walk over to Gamble. It's right across the street. It's a Friday afternoon at 6 o'clock in August. No one's around, right? And me and him walk in there, and he like starts crying. Like, he walks out to mid court, the lights are off, and it's just me and him in there. And he's like, man, like, he walks in there and he walks towards mid court and like tears in his eyes. And, he's like, man, this place is like so special. Like, damn, and you're like, it hits you. You guys know that, having
Oh
played at
yeah.
historic places, right? Like, you walk into the Carrier Dome, you walk into, on the pavilion and stuff, that stuff will shake you up, and when you have such good memories and you are so beloved, it's a place, I think, that's peaceful and serene, and it brings you back to such a great place in your life that there's this natural draw to want to get back to a game or get back to campus, because Lord knows, like, they're not coming back for the nightlife of stores, right? They're not coming back, because it's fun, or it's a 24-hour party town. It's just like they're coming back to like go to a game and feel that feeling again.
Yeah.
You want?
Go ahead, Sonny.
I was going to ask you, do you want to share either one funny, story with either Danny or with Coach Calhoun, either traveling or a memorable time that you just sticks in your memory?
We had a, you guys know, in the old days, you could, things were different as far as like with the kids in terms of, like, what you could get away with, what you couldn't get away with, right? So we win a big game with Coach Calhoun. We win a big game at St. John's. It was a regular season game at Madison Square Garden. It's January or February. It's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's a weeknight. And you'd play there at 7 o'clock, you win, 9 o'clock, shower, media. It's 10:30. The bus is starting to pull out of Madison Square Garden. We're gonna go with the old days, you'd give the kids meal money, $12 or something, right? And we're stopping Times Square. And coach says, listen, you got like 15 or 20 minutes. There's 9 million different fast food places here real quick. The managers go get us like Burger King or McDonald's. It's me and Coach Dickerman and Hobbsy and Coach Calhoun, and we're at the front. We're happy. We got to win. We're looking at the box score, talk about the game, and the guys all disperse, right? And they're all going to different places to go get their fast food, right? So the kids one by one, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, they start coming back on the bus with their food and this and that. We're ready to go. So now it's getting close. The managers are like doing head counts in the back of the bus. The bus driver's like sort of standing outside, and coach is like, come on, let's get going. Like, they all there, like, do a head count. So the manager's counting the back, and they come up, they're counting, and they come up one kid short. And it's this walk-on. It's a walk-on, right? And this particular walk-on, good kid, but he always used to find his way into like screwing up, right? Somebody been at a party and he's there, and so had a little bit of trouble. Someone misses a class, he's in the mid, like, and he's a walk-on, right? He was sort of hanging on by a thread, but all the guys on the team liked him. The players liked him. So they're like, so Donnie Marshall's on that team, and Donnie's like laughing. Donnie was an instigator, right? So Donnie, he sees this whole thing developing, and Donnie's telling the manager, like, you better come up and tell Coach Calhoun, like, who it is. And coach is like, let's go. Who are we waiting on? And the manager sheepishly goes up to the front. He's like, oh, so-and-so isn't here, right? And it's the walk-on. Coach says, son of a bit. Like, he's like, I'm sick. He's always like this and that, right? He goes, we said 15, 20 minutes. Come on, let's go. Like that. So now me and Howie and Cobbsy like look at it like, I mean, we can't leave this kid in New York City. This is like 1995. There's no cell phones. Like, what's he gonna do? Like, take a cab back to store? Like, there's no Ubers. There's no, like, we're like, oh, geez, like, no, I've had it with him. Like, I'm sick of him. This and that. Like, let's go. We're gonna. So now the managers are doing another head count. They're checking the bathroom in the back of the bus. The bus driver gets off and pretends like, he goes, I think I left the back hatch open. He's going to the back to open the hatch and close it, and open the hatch and close it, just to buy this kid more time. They do another head count, and they realize they're 2 people short. So they miscounted because they thought there was another. So they had two people short. They go back up to the, and Donnie's watching all this. Donnie's in like the 6th or 7th seat. So Donnie says to him, who, this and that. You got to go back and tell coach, like, and he goes, so they go up to the front and they're like, coach, we're missing someone else. And he's like, who? Now coach is like, he's like Ray Allen, like Ray's with him. So coach goes, all right, 5 more minutes. So sure enough, the kid was with Ray. Like the two of them were friends. They had gone to a place where it took a little time. So a minute later, here comes Ray. Here comes a walk-on up the stairs, like nothing had happened. And I look at the walk-on like, you have no idea
How close
you were. Yes. No, we never know if he'd ever followed through and left him, but like, oh my word. So
wow. Well,
yeah.
listen, Coach, we want to thank you so much for coming out and
Thank you very much.
sharing your time with us and talking about the old school and the new school over at UConn.
Yep.
And best of luck from all of us here at the Big East Rewind. For hopefully you could run it back for 3 in a row. That
Three-peat, baby, 3-peat.
I would love to
Thank
see
you.
that. And to see how that goes. So
Thanks.
best of luck with everything, and thanks again for coming and joining us.
Very excited.
Really appreciate you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks, man.
very much.
You've been listening to the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Sparrow. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus, Daryl Gurney. Check us out on all things social media by putting Big East Rewind in the space bar and on our website, www.bigeastrewind.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody. Great show.